Did you know the microwave was invented by an engineer who realized that every time he walked by a certain high-energy product his team was working on during World War II, the chocolate bar in his pocket melted? Following through with his investigation led him to the handy kitchen appliance now found in almost every home and restaurant around the world. I'm speaking today on the principle of transition. The question was put to me, how does one, the diligent aspirant, make that transference from transition to actuality in their soul life? To be so on the edge is often disconcerting and seems so elusive. Transference is the act of transformation, while transition is the interim process of the transference act as it strives toward completion. So, in actuality, you are asking, how does one skip the interim process of transition, leaping ahead to the transformation? There's a tongue twister for you. And I must alert you right at the onset that doing the skippity-doo past the transition cannot be done. Try to see the transition, the interim, as the journey, for that is what it really is. And we've all come to recognize that the journey's the thing. Being in the transition, as was spoken above, does feel at times a precarious position, for the light at the end of the tunnel is so elusive and so causing the temptation to turn back. But when one truly contemplates on what that would mean to turn back, they know the impossibility or danger of it, and thus does the presiding predicament become discouraging. They are well aware of their alternative. And that is the very reason for the scripture in the Holy Bible of Hebrews 10:35 to 39, which makes clear your alternative. Consider the journey as your reasonable service. There is no hurry, for you have eternity to perfect your soul. Proceed with caution and progress slowly and safely, for God's mercies are new every morning. The teachings of living ethics, that is, the principles of God, must set the direction in which the mind of man is to be propelled. Let us not violate free will. Let each one make haste in his own rhythm. Let each one sense the great vibrations in his own way, but let him sense it and make haste. Thus say the ageless wisdom teachers. When you can embrace the transition in the journey's the thing attitude, your entire being will be so changed that, as ageless wisdom teaches, there is no power on earth which can prevent the advance of man towards his destined goal, and no combination of powers can hold him back. It must be remembered that it took eons and generations to evolve to this point of your revelation and enlightenment, and so likewise it could take a lifetime or many before it is accounted as progress. What you leave this lifetime with stays with you eternally. Indeed, you brought last lifetime's progress with you to this one, and so forth goes evolution. Paul tells us, as we see in Romans 12:2, Jesus spoke of this, to not be conformed to this world, but to be transformed by the renewing of your mind. The old ways told men what to do, but Jesus came to show men what to be and how to think, and clearly promises definite results, and a principle here, that their thoughts would bring inner changes. So relax, enjoy the journey while living harmlessly, and let your soul set the pace of your podvig, your spiritual progress. A note from Viveka Chi here. There's going to come a time in the life of all true believers and seekers in which certain lifestyles, behaviors, schedules, fashions, favorite pastimes, and so forth will begin to change and fade in priority and taste. Often for those not of understanding of their podvig, their spiritual journey, it can result in confusion and concern, and drive them to seek medical or psychological advice and treatment. Man always can conjure a name for a disorder and a prescription to treat it. It is one of the greatest dismays of our Master. But listen well as I tell you, those of you who choose to understand and move forward, consider it that those changes are spiritually inspired from your seeking, diligent, and sincere heart for God. You are being moved from the box which has kept your focus on self, on the world views, on glamour and illusion. Be of great courage and trust your spirit to guide you in this new level of soul instruction. Be ever with an attitude of gratitude and trust. Be the observer and ever embracing of the changes, and you will see and understand amazing things. Eyes of your understanding, as it's spoken of in Ephesians 1:18. And you will know without a doubt that you are riding on the high places, as it speaks of in Isaiah 58:14. All of this is in King James Version, of course. It isn't the end of your growth, but it is most certainly another step. If we were given it all at once, our human minds would likely snap. God knows the best way and the speed in which to bring you to higher consciousness and ultimately usefulness. Simply trust and understand you are being blessed. Be prepared, for embracing and understanding those changes will most definitely set you apart. Yet it isn't something that you can force or pretend, which brings great danger in such deceit. You will recognize in your mind and spirit that setting apart as you go about your daily life and conversations. When your actions follow your knowledge, it will become obvious and most likely uncomfortable to those in your general circle who are of little or no understanding of what you have chosen to experience in this, your evolutionary podvig. Be kind and patient with them, for we each have a specific time set for our spiritual awakening. Pray for them, set your example always through right actions and reactions, and press on with courage, for the entire universe works unceasingly for those who have made such a courageous choice. I tell you this for the truth of it, in which I have proven. I tell you all this to prepare you for those changes, that you will recognize them as the moving forward on your spiritual path, not the losing of your mind. Trust your soul, which inhabits the omniscience of God, to be your only confidant and teacher, as spoken of in 1 John 2:27. We are called to be responsible on this newfound path that we're on. Boast and flaunt not, for your progress will be greatly hindered, as such a practice alienates those souls on the path behind you. This is not an easy spiritual path, for it requires great effort in changing from the world's thinking to that of God's. Be of good courage and faint not. Spend no time in dismay, for it may take a lifetime or more to perfect it. Yet always remember, sincere effort counts. Ageless wisdom teacher, the Tibetan, tells us this of the period of transition. It is the correlation between the transition of our planetary system and our physical bodies, for it is the everlasting maxim that as above, so below. One of the results of the world condition at this time, he says, is the speeding up of all the atomic lives upon and within the planet. This necessarily involves the increased vibratory activity of the human mechanism, with a consequent effect upon the psychic nature, producing an abnormal sensitivity and psychic awareness. It would be of value here to remember that the condition of humanity at this time is not the result of simply one factor, but of several, all of them being active simultaneously, because this period marks the close of one age and the inauguration of the new. The factors to which I refer are primarily three in number. One, this is a transition period between the passing out of the Piscean age, with its emphasis upon authority and belief, and the coming in of the Aquarian age, with its emphasis upon individual understanding and direct knowledge. The activity of these forces, characteristic of the two signs, produces in the atoms of the human body a corresponding activity. We are on the verge of new knowledges, and the atoms of the body are being tuned up for reception. These atoms, which are predominantly Piscean, are beginning to slow down their activity and to be occultly withdrawn, as it is called, or abstracted, while those which are responsive to the New Age tendencies are, in their turn, being stimulated and their vibratory activity increased. 2. The World War marked a climax in the history of mankind, and its subjective effect was far more potent than has heretofore been grasped. Through the power of prolonged sound, carried forward as a great experiment on the battlefields all over the world during a period of 4 years, 1914 to 1918, and through the intense emotional strain of the entire planetary populace, the web of etheric matter, called the veil of the temple, which separates the physical and astral planes, was rent or torn asunder, and the amazing process of unifying the two worlds of physical plane living and of astral plane experience was begun and is now slowly going on. Note here, the astral plane is the plane of illusion, of glamour, and of distorted presentation of reality, all of which leads to distorted emotions. It will be obvious, therefore, that this must bring about vast changes and alterations in the human consciousness, whilst it will usher in the age of understanding, of brotherhood, and of illumination. It will also bring about states of reaction and the letting loose of psychic forces which today menace the uncontrolled and ignorant, and warrant the sounding of a note of warning and of caution. 3. A third factor is as follows. It has been known for a long time by the mystics of all the world religions and by esoteric students everywhere that certain members of the planetary hierarchy are approaching closer to the Earth at this time. By this, I want you to infer that the thought or the mental attention of the Christ and of certain of his great disciples, the masters of the wisdom, is directed and focused at this time on human affairs, and that some of them are also preparing to break their long silence and may appear later among men. This necessarily has a potent effect, first of all, upon their disciples and on those who are attuned to and synchronized with their minds. And secondly, it should be remembered that the energy which flows through these focal points of the divine will have a dual effect and be destructive as well as constructive, according to the quality of the bodies which react to it. Different types of men respond distinctively to any inflow of energy, and a tremendous psychic stimulation is at this time going on, with results both divinely beneficent and sadly destructive. It might be added also that certain astrological relationships between the constellations are releasing new types of force which are playing through our solar system and on to our planet, and thereby making possible developments heretofore frustrated in expression and bringing about the demonstration of latent powers and the manifestation of new knowledges. All this must be most carefully borne in mind by the worker in the field of human affairs if the present crisis is to be rightly appreciated and its splendid opportunities rightly employed. I have felt it wise to write a few words concerning the condition to be found in the world today, especially in connection with esoteric occult and mystical groups, and the spiritualistic movement. All true spiritual thinkers and workers are much concerned at this time about the growth of crime on every hand, by the display of the lower psychic powers, by the apparent deterioration of the physical body, as shown in the spread of disease, and by the extraordinary increase in insanity, neurotic conditions, and mental unbalance. All this is the result of the tearing of the planetary web, and at the same time, it is a part of the evolutionary plan and the providing of the opportunity whereby humanity may take its next step forward. The hierarchy of adepts has been divided in opinion over the present world condition. Some believe it to be premature and consequently undesirable and providing a difficult situation, whilst others take their stand upon the basic soundness of humanity and regard the present crisis as inevitable and brought about by the developments in man himself. They look upon the condition as educational and as constituting only a temporary problem which, as it is solved, will lead mankind on the way to a still more glorious future. But there is, at the same time, no denying the fact that great and frequently devastating forces have been let loose upon the earth, and that the effect is a cause of grave concern to all the masters, their disciples, and workers. The difficulty can, in the main, be traced back to the overstimulation and the undue strain placed upon the mechanism of the bodies, which the world of souls in physical incarnation have to employ as they seek to manifest on the physical plane and so respond to their environment. The flow of energy pouring through from the astral plane and, in a lesser degree, from the lower mental plane is brought into contact with bodies that are unresponsive at first and over-responsive later. It pours into brain cells which, from lack of use, are unaccustomed to the powerful rhythm imposed upon them. And humanity's equipment of knowledge is so poor that the majority have not sense enough to proceed with caution and to progress slowly. Therefore, they are soon in danger and difficulty. Their natures are often so impure or so selfish that the new powers which are beginning to make their presence felt, and so opening up new avenues of awareness and contact, are subordinated to purely selfish ends and prostituted to mundane objectives. The glimpses vouchsafed to the man of that which lies behind the veil are misinterpreted, and the information gained is misused and distorted by wrong motives. But whether a person is unintentionally a victim of force or brings himself in touch with it deliberately, he pays the price of his ignorance or temerity in the physical body, even though his soul may go marching on. It is of no use at this time to close one's eyes to the immediate problem or to endeavor to lay the blame for the sad failures, the occult wrecks, for the half-demented psychics, the hallucinated mystics, and the feeble-minded dabblers in esotericism at the door of their own stupidity, or upon the backs of some teachers, groups, or organizations. Much blame can indeed be placed here and there, but it is the part of wisdom to face facts and to realize the cause of that which is everywhere transpiring and which can be stated as follows. The cause of the growth of the lower psychism and of the increasing sensitivity of humanity at this time is the sudden inflow of a new form of astral energy through the rent veil which has, until a short while ago, safeguarded the many. Add to this the inadequacy of the mass of human vehicles to meet the newly imposed strain, and some idea of the problem can be grasped. Let it not be forgotten, however, that there is another side to the picture. There are always, remember, the pairs of opposites. The inflow of this energy has brought many hundreds of people into a new and deeper spiritual realization. It has opened the door through which many will pass before long and take their second initiation. And it has let a flood of light into the world, a light which will go on increasing for the next 30 years, bringing assurance of immortality and a fresh revelation of the divine potencies in the human being. Thus is the new age dawning. Access to levels of inspiration hitherto untouched has been facilitated, the stimulation of the higher faculties, and this on a large scale, is now possible, and the coordination of the personality with the soul and the right use of energy can go forward with renewed understanding and enterprise. Ever the race is to the strong, and always the many are called and the few chosen. This is the occult, the long-hidden law. We are now in a period of tremendous spiritual potency and of opportunity to all upon the probationary path and the aspirant on the path of discipleship. It is the hour wherein the clarion call goes forth to men to be of good cheer and of good will, for deliverance is on the way. But it is also the hour of danger and of menace for the unwary and the unready, for the ambitious, the ignorant, and for those who selfishly seek the way and who refuse to tread the path of service with pure motive, lest this widespread upheaval and consequent disaster to so many should seem to you unfair. Let me remind you that this one life is but a second of time in the larger and wider existence of the soul, and that those who fail and are disrupted by the impact of the powerful forces now flooding our earth will nevertheless have their vibrations stepped up to better things along with the mass of those who achieve, even if their physical vehicles are destroyed in the process. The destruction of the body is not the worst disaster that can overcome a man. It is not my purpose to cover the whole ground possible in relation to the situation in the field of psychism caused by the inflow of astral energy at this time. I seek to confine myself to the effect of this inflow on aspirants and sensitives. Those two words, aspirants and sensitives, are employed by me in this article to distinguish the awakened seeker.